And we are back. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage-porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Network here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center, deep in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, the Naked City. I was corrected the other day. It's the city of 9 million stories. And yeah, Rhode Island's got 9 million stories. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio. On the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. CoalitionRadio.us. Folks, if you could take a moment, if you're listening to the show for the first time, if you could please like our page or follow us on Twitter, we'd be grateful. The economics of social media are pretty challenging. It's tough for us to get our word out to people. It's tough amongst the clutter of local media to kind of shine through the murk. People's viewing habits, well, they're long-lasting. That's how Channel 10 can beat Channel 12 in ratings every day, despite the fact that even with the loss of Mr. McGowan, Channel 12 is far better. Can we all agree on that? I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? Anyway, joining us, I call it an emergency. If I had, like Drudge has, that little beacon that, shifted lights and flash right, left, and right, and blue and red and whatever, I'll get the Coalition disco ball out. But on a serious note, a conversation that I've been having with Amy Gardner, who is our guest, who is joining us via the miracle of Skype, over the last year is finally coming to fruition, if you will, to that magic moment. Legislation that she's been aggressively fighting, that we'll get into some detail and discuss in just a moment, is being announced as going to be heard Thursday at the Rise of the Senate at Halitosis Hall, all credit to Rudy Cheeks, or as we like to call it here on the Coalition, Mordor. From my opinion, this type of destructive, privacy-wreaking, big state intrusion into our personal lives represents, I believe, one of the biggest challenges we face as Americans in this country today. We are database happy in this state. We got prescription medical database, we got your DNA database. Now they want to have, and she's going to explain yet another database. This is from a state with an Attorney General office who somehow lost a few thousand criminal cases that they were supposed to pursue. Oops, crazy us. But let me tell you, when it comes down to databases of our information, they're right on top of it. And they have no damn right to be. It's time to get, just not annoyed, miffed, peeved, verklempt. It's time to get mad. It's time to get really hostile and angry. In the sense of, not on a personal level or to promote violence or anything, but it's time internally to channel that anger at these constant intrusions into our life by big government that fails at literally everything it does, by the way, other than intrude into our lives, and say, if you're a boxing fan, no mas, no more, end it. So, Amy, let's take this opportunity and again, start from scratch a little bit. I mean, you've been over it a couple of times, but I don't know what people really comprehend, unless you're one of us in the bubble who obsess and follow this stuff minute by minute. I don't know if people really comprehend what's happening here. So tell us about the legislation, the problems, and what we can do as Rhode Islanders in the next 4 days to try and fight this.
Yeah, definitely. So these bills are coined the bad database tracking bills. And what they do is they auto opt in to a database held at the Rhode Island Department of Health. You do not have to be informed, nor do you have to give your consent. Now, the description of the bill, if you look it up online, calls it a vaccination database. And it would be a whole different conversation, same principles, but slightly different conversation about the database itself if it was actually one specific field data. That's not actually what this database does, however. It uses the terminology that all of the nationally endorsed data elements of the CDC are what is approved to be in this database. And it takes a little digging to figure out what that bill terminology actually is. And going to the CDC website and clicking link after link, you finally get there. And it's a 6 6-page Excel spreadsheet, lots of different data fields, well beyond just whether or not you said yes or no to a vaccination. And then because it links directly to this CDC approved list, if that list was to ever expand or change in any way, the Rhode Island database would automatically be approved to expand or change because the bill directly ties to whatever that list ever does. So that's pretty concerning and pretty bad. And we already have a database for the children in Rhode Island, and the current database already tracks crazy amounts of things like whether or not the mother has a college education, whether or not she gave birth by C-section or vaginally, like that has anything to do with the child's like medical vaccination record. But again, it's sold as vaccination database, but there's so much more to the database fields, and you don't give consent to your information being put in there. More importantly, you're not even allowed to remove your file. If you contact the Department of Health, you cannot remove your child's information from this database. So you're automatically opted in. All these data fields are filled in, and there's not anything you can do about removing the file. And then if you want to view this information, if I want to view my child's information, I have to make an appointment at my child's doctor's office, and then I have to sit down with an associate of the office for them to log in and allow me permission. So is that not my child's data? Why do I not have an easier way for me to have access, get copies, anything I want for a file that is technically my child's data file? Just some serious concerning things, and we've been fighting this bill for a long time. And Thursday evening is the Senate hearing about this bill, and so we need as many bodies of people that can willingly show up to the State House, even if you're not comfortable speaking in front of the committee. The bodies make a difference. Signing the sheet to say that you oppose it and you're in attendance even if you're not speaking. These are all very important things. Thursday, the 9th, at the Rise of the Senate, which is approximately 4:30 p.m. So that's the summary of the.
Well, it's interesting because my experience has been if you can't make it at 4:30, because lots of Rhode Islanders, despite Gina's best efforts, work for a living. Most of us are like me. I take my few meager belongings and I travel north to Massachusetts to do the work that people from Massachusetts won't do. So if you can't get home at 4:30, get there. Fear not. The talking heads, the poobahs to the state, very often will pontificate on not only the merits of their legislation, but also will spend countless amounts of time involved in shameless self-promotion. And before the great unwashed, that being you and I, are allowed to express in a few minutes our thoughts on it. So I got a feeling this one's going to run for a while. Get there as soon as you can, but you know what? Feel free to swing on by. The Halitosis Hall, i.e. Mortar, is a highly entertaining place. Think of it as the multiplex of the damned. If things aren't happening in one room, there's plenty. It's kind of, what was that long-running series of movies? Hostel. There's incredible horrors going on in literally each room. And so if one isn't appalling enough, you can go down to see another committee, and you can see them lay waste to your civil liberties and or your financial future. The opportunities abound. Who is the primary sponsor to this? Who's
on the Senate? On the Senate side, the sponsor is Crowley, and she is part of the Senate committee that is hearing the bill.
Oy. Oh, that's just horrible.
She is also the only sponsor on the Senate bill. There's 3 or 4 of them on the House bill, but there's only her name listed on the Senate bill.
Right. Oh, so what do you suggest to people to do? there's a lot of frustration right now out there because people are just so, I don't know, they're just so exhausted by this type of activity. Do you have any suggestions? I mean, clearly, organizations like yours have run several years successfully. Because don't think of the one or two that got by us, but think of the overwhelming amount of legislation that your organization has prevented. How do you fuel activists to continue to just kind of to keep the good fight going?
Well, that's a good question, and it changes at different times of the year. There's different ways, but we're doing things like May 11th. We will be at the Warwick Mall with Discover You events, and we will have a table. We will be giving out information and discussing informed consent and standing for your rights and your choice of making sure that you voice your opinion at the State House, that you connect with your local group and specifically us so that we can make sure you're getting the most timely notifications and that you have the ability to act. So we do it by an email database, a website, a petition. I will put it on the link of the video, and you'll also be able to access it directly from our website, nohpvmandateri.com. Social media, every avenue possible, because everyone needs access, and to keep them energized is by to continually doing something. The leaders of the organization, me and my awesome core team, consistently need to be doing something ourselves and informing our members of what it is we are doing, because when the leaders don't tell members what they're doing in the background and how they're continuing to move forward, members don't have the ability to stay excited and to stay supporting something that they're not fully aware is happening.
Right. Now, conversely, what is the motivation of Senator Crowley in promoting this? I mean, what do they think they're accomplishing, and are they doing this at someone's bidding?
It is my understanding that the Rhode Island Department of Health asked her to put this bill in directly. That she was asked to sponsor the bill and to put forth it. I don't 100% understand why. She was the sponsor last year also, and we gave her a lot of input. She heard a lot of people say that they wanted to be able to, if anything, if the database exists, it should be opt-in only, or the database should not exist. You should not have to opt yourself out and go through extra steps and be auto-enrolled. Even the ACLU spoke and made testimony on being opposed to any kind of database opting you in and not giving you the option. But she created another bill this year, and it was sponsored, my understanding, written directly from the Department of Health, and she just sponsored it and put her name on it. But again, it is auto opt-in versus opt yourself in.
What has she had any type of public interaction other than this potential committee testimony? I mean, is she debating this with people? Has she provided any level of accessibility?
Not beyond speaking to some activists that show directly to the State House and try to have conversations with her. It's not my understanding that she's discussed this on radio or on social media, or I don't believe she's made any form of a public statement on her own bill.
Interesting. So this joins the legion of bills that connected folks at in big government Rhode Island simply shuttled down. God only knows what the quid pro quo is. I'm sure it's honest, but I'm sure it's at the same time something legislative that'll be exchanged as a chit. What other groups are in opposition to this besides yourself and the American Civil Liberties Union of Rhode Island?
Well, there is the Health Choice Rhode Island group, in addition to my group of the Rhode Islanders Against Mandated HPV. Although this is obviously not specific to HPV, we have always additionally advocated for informed consent and transparency, and that's the portion where this bill falls into still being something that my organization would fight. So there's Health Choice Rhode Island is another organization. And then I can't say that I know of any other specific public statement made by organizations other than the ACLU. But there's also a Facebook page called the Rhode Island Wellness Society that has shared information and has activists in the State House and lobbying in opposition to this bill.
Now, I'm curious, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here. When last year, in sort of a typical stealth manner, and this would be a stealth bill if it wasn't for you, quite frankly, the leadership of Rhode Island decided to pass a bill that allowed for warrantless searches of the prescription medical database, which just a few scant years before that we've been assured would have the full protection of the Rhode Island Attorney General's office. And then it was the AG himself, the much loathed Peter Kilmartin, the stench of his administration still lingers, by the way, who brought on this little beauty. And that point in time, groups like the Rhode Island Medical Society and others were quite outspoken. Why? Do you think this bill is just under the radar despite your best efforts, or is there?
No, I think because when you look it up online, every single bill, when they're made, they all have their little 2-sentence description. Well, this bill description is that it's a vaccination database. And until you actually read the details, the specifics, and the wording, do you realize that this is far beyond just vaccines. But I think because it is described as a vaccination database is why, being that, vaccines are just controversial, whether we like it or not, I think it creates a step back of people to either look farther or to be willing to take a public stand.
Right. Are you able to get any sense of where it stands with the committee? I mean, do you think this is going to be passed through, or
last year it passed the Senate committee. Last year it passed the Senate floor. It was the House side that stopped this bill from passing last year by working and speaking with House member after House member, and it never came out of committee on the House side last year.
Mm-hmm. And has it come out of committee yet on the House side?
It has not come out of committee. It was heard in committee, but it was held for further study like all other bills are on their first time.
Interesting. Although, as I mention all the time now, we saw several circumstances in the last year's legislative session where bills that were held for further study were magically resurrected.
Was it within the last 72 hours of the legislative session?
Right. Yeah. Lazarus.
Yeah, that's after they ixnay the rules.
Right. Suspend the rules of the House. The most dangerous words in Rhode Island. All of a sudden, bills magically pass through, find themselves on the floor, and getting the, as we like to say at the coalition, the rubber stamp of your Rhode Island Senate. These are the same people who, under cloak of night, attempted to give you a baseball stadium that none of you wanted. So don't think for a moment that if in the absence of overwhelming public pressure, that folks will simply do the right thing. But has been often
Oh,
said,
yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Definitely. We need to have everybody making as much noise as they possibly can consistently, not just on social media, but also regularly contacting the committee members that these bills are held in, but also personal representatives and legislators, and making sure that they know you want them to vote no. And the bills we're talking about are H5541 and S676. And we also have pre-written emails where you can send directly to the committee. They're about 2 paragraphs long, but they are completely designed for you to edit, add to it, subtract to it, make it however you want to make it. When you click the link, it just fills in the email on your email software, but you can do whatever you want with it. And you can access those by 2019.nohpvmandateri.com. So you can send a direct message to the committee to oppose these database bills that way.